I love this happy family picture I made at the end here because that's exactly what we are here at Fantasy and Frames. One big happy family. Speaking of the happy family, this season, new member of the happy family, the host of the Daily Fix Pod, Keith Fleming. What's going on, buddy?
I contemplated not coming today because the Falcons looked so bad on Thursday. I thought Nate was going to make fun of me for at least the first hour. And I don't feel as good about the 6 wins. Luckily, we have an easy schedule the rest of the way, so maybe we get there. But ready for a big day of football and love waking up with NFL action on. I don't care who it is. Tampa Bay, Seattle is actually a pretty good game for what we've been getting for a lot of these primetime ones.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And, of course, we'll be keeping you up to date, folks, on all the shenanigans that are happening over in Germany. That is a place I would love to go to watch a football game. Like, no disrespect to London, but, like, just imagine, like, all the steins of beer that you have around you plus football. Like, that just sounds like a good tailgating, good time there. Then again, I would love to go to London or any other game outside of the U.S. just to say that I went because that would be really awesome. Absolutely. So that notwithstanding, as we do every week here, we're answering all of your start and sit questions. Ooh, I said it right this time. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. And of course, we will be going through every game through Monday Night Football, talking about all the fantasy relevant players, both on offense and for IDP. Right now, as you may or may not know, the Bucs are taking on the Seahawks. Seahawks have the ball. They are 0-0 as we speak, 3rd and 5 for the Seahawks. Now, with that being said, before people start waking up and then start and sit questions, I did it again. Twice in a row I got it right. That's fantastic. I hope I'm not jinxing myself. Let's get into our first matchup this week. The Minnesota Vikings go to Buffalo and take on the Buffalo Bills, -6.5 there. Wow. Josh Allen being declared active will start this game. Really don't know what to make of all this, considering all the reports we were hearing during the week. Jonathan, how you feeling about Josh Allen this week for your fantasy rosters? Do you think he's a top 5 quarterback, or do you have to bump him down maybe a little bit lower outside the into the double digits, or what are your thoughts?
I probably wouldn't drop him that low. To me, I mean, it's really hard to know with this kind of thing because at the end of the day, he's Josh Allen. 80%, 70%, whatever it is, Josh Allen is still better than most quarterbacks. If I have him, I'm probably still playing him over any streaming option, anything like that. So yeah, for me, he's kind of, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10, I would guess. I mean, the bigger question for me is, what do you do with all of the other pieces? Because obviously, I mean, you're starting Stephon Diggs because he's Stephon Diggs. But, how much confidence do we have in Gabe Davis? How do we see that running game? Nyheim Hines wasn't really involved. How do we see Hines? How do we see Singletary? I think Josh Allen, if you have him, you're likely playing him. But it's the other options, I think, where there are much bigger questions.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
But I don't know the answer to.
No, I mean, who really does, right? Until we actually see it on the field. I was really low on Singletary heading into this week without Josh Allen, thinking that he was going to be the quarterback, as he was one of my sits this week. That even more so if Josh Allen is playing kind of makes me feel that they're going to be not emphasizing the pure running game as opposed to, Nate, what you were saying on our Wednesday show here at Fourth and Frames, the pass catchers out of the backfield. This is a tough one here. For the Vikings, however, this is not so tough. You have Kirk Cousins, who I think could have a good game. Who's the defensive end linebacker whose name is blanking my mind right now for the Buffalo Bills?
Gregory Rousseau.
Yeah, no Rousseau. He's week to week. Got Von Miller there. The tackles for the Vikings are very, very good. Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. So giving up pressures is not exactly what they do. Giving up sacks is not exactly something they do over the course of the season. The interior of the offensive line could pose some problems, which is why somebody like Ed Oliver, for example, could maybe wreak some havoc there. The problem is the defensive line for the Buffalo Bills, for those of you who are unaware, they like to rotate a lot. They have a lot of good pieces. They rotate them in and out. Getting that snap consistency from week to week is a little troublesome. Is there somebody, Nate, maybe when we're talking a little bit of IDP on the defensive side of the ball, along the defensive line for the Bills, people should be paying attention to?
I mean, I like Daquan Jones. He, from a matchup standpoint, Ezra Cleveland and Ed Ingram, both the starting guards for Minnesota, are first and third, I believe. Yeah, first and third in pressures allowed among guards. So 2 top 3 or bottom 3, I guess, in this situation. You don't want to be the top. On the same team usually means interior pressure could be pretty heavy. Not too worried about the outside, like you said, between Darisaw and Von Miller matchup should be good. AJ Epinesa might see a little more work in with Rousseau, but Buffalo does the one thing that, like Philly, Buffalo started it, and more people are following that rotation on the defensive line. But Daquan Jones has been extremely good. It's just, it's tough if you're from an IDP standpoint. You're going to start a defensive lineman that's a defensive tackle. But I found that you're looking for that, like our chasing upside piece and some of these little one-on-one matchups each week that I find to exploit. You get a lot of sneaky good value. It's kind of like picking a slot receiver over like a number 2 in a certain matchup. So yeah, I do like Daquan Jones.
Nice. And of course, Justin Jefferson, you're starting. Dalvin Cook, you're starting, I want to say by default almost at this point, even though he has put up really, really good weeks here and there. Just there's something off about this running game for the Vikings. Obviously, it's not heavily as emphasized as the passing game now that they have O'Connell there as the head coach. Les, welcome to the show. Good morning. What are your thoughts on Adam Thielen? Is he somebody that could potentially be flexible this week, or that's funny, or somebody that just is not, an option for you?
I like Adam Thielen. Sorry about that. Yeah, not spectacular, but number 2 behind Justin Jefferson. I actually picked him up. I couldn't believe he was on waivers, but in one of my leagues, I got him, so I could roll with him.
Nice.
It's strange. I was going to say he's turned into like the sort of the opposite of the Adam Thielen that we've known the last kind of couple of years, where he was just scoring touchdowns every week. He's seeing plenty of targets, but I think he's only scored 2 touchdowns this year, which isn't like the Adam Thielen that we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think we were expecting KJ Osborne to make a jump this year, and that really hasn't happened. So I can go with Thielen.
Hawkinson as well is a really interesting option, given how many targets he saw first week.
Wasn't it 9 targets for 99 yards or something along those lines?
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. It's perfect that Keith Fleming's camera situation just went downhill, because I was about to ask him for some DFS plays this week for this matchup, but when he gets back, we'll go back to him and ask him just really quickly what his thoughts are. Let's head over to the Windy City now. We have the Detroit Lions taking on the Chicago Bears. So Tyler Heil, who can't make it this week, our head of Dynasty here at Fantasy and Frames, he was very, in our Chasing Upside article, which you can head over and read at fantasyandframes.com, was pretty high on Khalil Herbert this week as a potential upside play. Les, in your buy low, sell high, you were very pro sell high on Khalil Herbert. Let's get into that first, and then we'll get into the matchup. Why do you think the people out there, if they're the Khalil Herbert managers, should really start thinking about capitalizing off of his success?
Well, first off, thanks for the mention on the article. Long story short, I mean, Khalil Herbert is a great running back. He's arguably a better running back than David Montgomery. But bottom line is, with the emergence of Justin Fields running the ball more, and the coaching staff is featuring him more, I just think he's not going to get the touches that he's had. I mean, unless Montgomery goes out. But I think what I put, like, he's third in carries on the team right now in the last 4 weeks, behind Montgomery and Justin Fields. So great running back. I think that's what sell high is, getting value at peak, at peak performance. And I think now it's a good time to do that.
Nice. Let's quickly jump back to Buffalo, Minnesota. Keith, Real quick, any good DFS plays this week for this game here for DraftKings for your lineups here?
I honestly probably would try to stay away from this game. I just, like Diggs is so expensive. Davis is so boomer bust. You obviously, if it's a standard league, I'm going to play Allen, but in DFS, I don't trust to play him. And then with Minnesota, like Hawkinson's honestly my favorite play at 5,300. I know Buffalo is a difficult matchup, but he got peppered with targets in week 1. And just to remind everyone, the Vikings coaching tree is from the Sean McVay one. They love throwing to tight ends. Their tight ends run more routes than any offense in football. They get more looks than any offense in football. And Hawkinson is arguably the best tight end any of these teams that run that system have had. And they showed last week they're going to use him a lot. I think he has another big week, and he's just underpriced for the player he is and the amount of targets he's going to get.
Heading back to Chicago and Detroit, speaking of tight end, Jonathan, in chasing upside this week, you wrote about Cole Kmet. What are your thoughts on him entering this weekend for this game?
Yeah, I really like Cole Kmet this week. With the chasing upside piece, at tight end, you're throwing a lot of dart throws when you're going past 12. But he's tight end 14 in Fantasy Pros ECR. I can't get on board with that comment. Sorry. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, and over his career, I think before that he'd scored 2. So, we're not going to see the volume. I don't think Fields has thrown over 200 yards much at all this season. He's getting it done with his legs, but with someone like Kmet, he's seeing more red zone targets, and so I think he's a good sort of deep play if you need one.
Last week we saw Nate for the Lions running game. DeAndre Swift returned to action. Saw Jamal Williams. Man, it's a tricky situation, this Lions backfield, or is it? Am I overthinking it? Should I still be pro Jamal Williams and kind of temper my expectations for DeAndre Swift, or do you think it's another week, another positive sign that he's playing this week? What are our thoughts here for this running back situation for the Detroit Lions?
It's probably another frustrating week, if anything, because we see Swift have these opportunities where he breaks off big plays because that's the type of back. Now, can't say that last week. He had 2 attempts last week. So
right.
Last week was standing. We know the upside for Swift. The problem is I think right now he's just an in between the 20s type dynamic play where you may see the receiving work. That's the only thing that even remotely gave him value last week in a 4 reception or 3 reception game. Yeah. But it's like we talked about the last, feels like 2 months, is Jamal Williams is exclusively their goal line back and within the 10. And I think it's going to stay that way. And that decreases 80% of DeAndre Swift's value as a whole. Unless he can break one out from the 25, it's hard to start him with comfort. At least problem is don't have a ton of other options typically. If he's your number one, what are you going to go? You're going to say, here, let's think of an example, guys. Let's find the cutoff for who?
Craig Reynolds. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, that's a little angry.
You got AJ Dillon.
Okay. That's not a bad spot. Considering, let's see where Swift's at ECR. He's way ahead of that. But I don't think that's far off. Yeah, I say way. That's 5 spots ahead, but still. I would start Gibson over Swift. Tell me if anybody wouldn't. Mostert over Swift?
You're talking standard only, right?
Versus
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we're not.
I do like Swift a lot today for DFS.
Oh, do you really?
6,400. He scored 22 points the last 2 weeks on, I think it was 14 combined touches. The coaching staff said they wanted to get him the ball more Monday. He complained this week about getting the ball. I just think that if he gets 10, 15 touches, he's first in fantasy in points per touch. He's first in breakaway percentage. All of his numbers are unbelievable. He just has not been getting snaps. If he gets 10, 15 snaps against a Bears defense that they've given up 9 plays of 25 yards or more to running backs in their last 4 games, I mean, he can put up 12, 14 points on any touch. And I like his upside. I don't think he's going to be high owned. So at 6,400, I think he's a good play this week for DK.
Would you play him
also
season long?
It would depend on who I have. Obviously, it's my other options.
Right. So Nate, you were rattling off. You had Antonio Gibson as an option. Would you roll Gibson?
I would play Gibson over Swift because McKissick, right, is out.
Yep.
Or they said he's going to get all. Yeah. So he's going to get all the pass catching. I'm playing Gibson for sure over Swift.
What about Kareem Hunt?
No.
That's a good one. That's a good barometer right there. I think it's closer for me between the two. I worry in the fact that if he doesn't have receiving touchdowns, and he doesn't have touchdowns. I mean, it's been since week 1 since he scored a rushing touchdown, and in that time he hasn't exceeded 60 yards rushing. Hell, he hasn't exceeded 35 since week 2. Now, granted, he's been hurt, so that makes that seem a lot more extravagant. But
he's only played the last 2 games, and he's been in very little snaps. I just think he's going to get the ball more today. And against the Bears defense, when you're the guy that scores the most points per touch of any running back in fantasy, like you get 10, 15 touches against a bad defense, I'm going to take my chance with him.
Hey, Les, let me ask you a question. Amon-Ra St. Brown last week, he didn't have the greatest game. He only got you 7.5 points in half PPR. Got you 9. It was getting peppered, though. Got 9 targets, only caught 4 of them, which is disconcerting here. Only got 55 yards. What are your thoughts on him this week going against the Bears, who kind of got dealt with by Waddle and Tyreek Hill last week? Obviously, I'm not saying that Amon-Ra and Jared Goff are the equivalent of that, but the point is that you put up good wide receivers against the secondary, you're going to have some success. Is Amon-Ra somebody that you can consider a good wide receiver, and do you anticipate any success for him this week?
Yeah, I feel like if you can't play Amon this week against the Bears, like you just said with the secondary, Roquan Smith is out or gone. If you can't play him this week, then when can you ever play him? Hawkinson's gone, so that middle should be his. Is Josh Reynolds even playing this week?
Not sure.
Short answer, I like him on this week.
Yeah, I think he's a huge positive regression candidate. I mean, he's seen 19 targets over the last 2 weeks, but I think I noted down he's only scored 18 points in half PPR over those 2 games. So there's a massive discrepancy between the amount of work that they're trying to get him and the actual points that you're seeing. So at some point, I think we'll see a rebalance. And as Les rightly said, I think this is a good week to start him.
Reynolds is out this week. Thank you very much, Keith. Got a Scott Fishbowl question here. Tootsie Pop 6. Les, remind me, is this the lady that we were having shots with after the Expo on Expo Sunday? Am I missing something here? Is this
Hey, Rachel, what's going on there, Tootsie Pop?
Rachel, welcome to the show. Scott Fishbowl question for us. If Stafford is out, would you start Wolford or Tannehill? I would go Tannehill. I mean, it's kind of what can you really expect from Wolford? I actually think the Denver offense is going to have a big week this week, and I think Tannehill, if he plays, has the upside here, and it will have to kind of do his thing, whether it's rushing the ball or throwing the short intermediate or do what the Vikings do to kind of stay in games. Wolford, again, does anybody have any reports on Tannehill, whether or not he is playing, or is this going to be another Malik Willis week? We can look at that real quick.
I'm looking at it right now. They say he's expected to start, so
he better, or that Denver defense will wear out Tennessee if they can't throw.
Yeah, so definitely go Tannehill this week. Got another question here. Speaking of Stafford, what value do you see in Cup this week, being at 9,100 if Stafford can't pass protocol?
I think zero. I don't want anything of any of the top receivers this week, and that includes Tyreek Hill, who has a decent matchup. If you're going to spend money this week, Saquon Barkley is facing the Texans. I mean, it's unbelievable. They've had 5 guys in 8 weeks score 30 points or more against them at the running back position in DraftKings. 5 out of 8 weeks, 30 points or more, including Khalil Herbert, who Montgomery got hurt and came in and he still scored 30 points. And you have the offense that wants to run more than any in football. Barkley's going to get 25 plus touches against them. I'm going to be shocked if he doesn't score 30 points. And I'm trying to get him in every lineup. So I'm trying to spend down on receiver. And then I think the second best back this week is also kind of expensive is ETN versus the Chiefs. He's just undervalued. He's averaging 25.5 points a game since being a starter. And you look, every other running back who averages 20 points or more are $500 to $1,500 more than that. So I'm going to spend it running back this week, and you can save a lot at receiver, tight end, defense, other positions, even QB. I like some of the lower options. I would not play Kupp. And again, I don't really like Jefferson or any of those guys at that price. I just think the running backs have better matchups. Barkley is the best one. He's 8,600. That's the best play I think that there is, the safest too.
Yeah, let's go to the defensive side of the ball here. Let's start with the Detroit Lions at linebacker. Man, the weeks you're like, Alex Anzalone is going to do something great. He does something not great. The weeks that you're just like, yeah, why would I ever start him? He puts up 12 points last week, or he's projected for 12 points this week. You had to go with him or Rodriguez. Where are you going with him this week?
Well, I don't know if Rodrigo's playing.
Well, that would be a huge.
I got to wait to see there, because if he's out, Derek Barnes steps in. Derek Barnes had it filled in really nicely last week. But we do a song and dance with Derek Barnes the last 2 years. Hype is there. He has a big blow-up game. We see the upside. We see why he was so highly coveted. And then he goes, does his disappearing act for the next 2 starts that he gets. So it's concerning as far as not knowing what Malcolm Rodriguez is going to do. But Anzalone is that guy, it's not a fun play. You just have to assume. The question then that I have is, what do we expect from Detroit? Do they move the ball a lot? Do they convert on third downs? Do they possess the ball enough where Detroit needs to be on defense for Anzalone to be that upside play? And I know that sounds cliche, but fact of the matter is he'll be a pure volume play guy. He's not going to have a ton of explosive plays. And I don't know, this is a different Chicago team. So any narrative that I find, like as far as Chicago's, pretty susceptible to the linebackers, generally speaking, it's because they've been a run first team for 8 weeks, 7 weeks. And now they're still a run first team. It's just a different person running and different reads in different situation and
you can't catch him.
And you can't catch him. That is more difficult. Exactly. Now you couldn't really catch Herbert either, but a plotting back, like, I hate to call Montgomery a plotting back. That's kind of mean, but you get the idea. It's easier to game plan against a running back getting touches versus Justin Fields. So, yeah, I would rather have Deshaun Elliott probably than if I'm going to go with a comfortable play IDP wise.
Right. I mean, Elliott, since week 4, 11 tackles, 12 tackles, had their bye week. Week 7, he had 8 tackles. He was out week 8, 7 tackles last week. That translates into 10 points, 15 points, 29 points, 11 points, 10.5. I mean, consistency right there. On the flip side for Chicago Bears, again, no Roquan Smith last week. Got traded to Baltimore. But Nicholas Morrow, he had a pretty decent week. Got you 13 points on 8 tackles.
Yeah.
We were kind of hoping, like, hey, if, Roquan Smith is gone and Morrow takes his place, well, then Jack Sanborn could be a sneaky play, but he wasn't exactly this. He was so sneaky that he barely got registered on the stat board for IDP. On the flip side, we have for defensive back, Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker are turning into good plays week in and week out. Brisker, more of like, for me, a DB, solid DB2. I don't think he's reached that DB2, DB1 upside yet, but he's definitely on his way. But I would temper expectations, expecting more than a solid DB2.
I'm going to back up real quick for a second, because I think Jack Sanborn's better than playing that, because he led the team in solo tackles. He had 7. So not as bad a play. Now, granted, he didn't have a double-digit production in most like fantasy pro scoring, but 7 solo tackles for your first game out against a Miami team, I think that's not terrible. Not terrible. I'm not gonna get my Jack Sanborn jersey quite yet. I'm waiting to get my my Kyle Pitts jersey from Keith when Atlanta goes 5-13 or whatever the hell it is.
Free picks. Let's play some Ritter. We're at that point.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm ready because those passes to Pitts, wide open, overthrow him from 16 yards away and misses them by 14
I mean, London's good
somehow.
too, right? Like that's two good young receivers to where if they go to Ritter, he can't run as much as Mariota. That's why I tell people again, I think that change is going to happen soon. So if you could get Pitts and London, who are basically nothing probably right now, or especially Pitts, people are really down on him. I would look to get him because, I mean, you saw the catch he made over the middle Thursday night. Yeah. The dude's a freak. We're just a team that can't throw it or got a quarterback that can't throw it.
So I put Mariota.
You can throw upside down, to be fair.
Seriously, what was that? Like, for real. Like, it felt like one of those movies, where they have the record scratcher. Like, you might wonder how I got in this position or it got at this point. And it's like, what are you doing, bro? You're on your ass. You ain't Patrick Mahomes. You're Marcus Mariota.
What sucks about it the most, too, is that Miles Hartsfield was like an IDP upside play because I thought, he was in the slot and just a perfect scenario of run stopping safety / cornerback. You get some of these cornerback premiums. He's the one that picked it off and returned it for 6. And then it was evident that Mariota was, on his ass the whole time when he actually got rid of the ball. But I've never been so disappointed for that to be ruled down because it was the only thing Miles Hartsfield did the entire game. So oops on that one.
Yeah, I had Mariota as one of my starts last week, and let me just tell you, it was brutal getting into the fourth quarter with just 9.28 points, and then lo and behold, that touchdown drive saved my recommendation that week. I was like, oh my god, thank you.
He did the same thing last night. He actually, or Thursday, he still ended up scoring like 17, 18 points, which is ridiculous with the way he played.
Yep, I was very happy with the outcome, never recommending him again. That being the case, I think we can go now to our next matchup. We were just talking about it a little bit earlier. Denver, Tennessee. I have Russell Wilson as my start of the week quarterback. I think he's going to have a great time against the secondary. The Titans give up, I want to say, the second or third most points to quarterbacks, the third most points to wide receivers. And we all know how susceptible the corners are to the receivers here for Tennessee Titans. I asked Diami Brown in week 2 versus the Washington Commanders just how susceptible they can be. If I say Russell Wilson, confident start. I'm confident in him this week. They got a brand new center who's calling out more protections. They looked better down the stretch once they addressed the offensive line in London. Are you on board? Are you feeling this? Are you on board with this Russell Wilson? Go Russell Wilson, Broncos country, let's ride. Or is it kind of like Jorge, how many of these sugar cookie lattes have you had this morning? Maybe you need to temper expectations, or maybe you don't need to temper expectations. Maybe I just need to see it before I'm on the same bandwidth as you. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, with Russ, it's tough, but this is that matchup. Like you said, the secondary's weak. Bud Dupree's out. I think Zach Cunningham is out too. So the line is hurt too. This is it. I had Jerry Jeudy in my buy low piece. He's had a sneaky good couple of weeks. And if they can build on that and get Cortland Sutton involved, I like it.
Yeah. I like that Jeudy call. I noted down that he's had at least 50 receiving yards in the last 5 games. And for Tennessee, as you guys have said, there's a clear disparity between them against the pass and against the rush. So I think against running backs, I think they've allowed the 5th fewest. And then Jorge, as you mentioned, it's they're allowing the 3rd most to wide receivers. So there's a clear disparity there between how they give up points.
Yeah, Judy's one of my favorite DFS plays. 5,700. He saw 21 targets first 4 weeks. He's seen 33 the last 4. And this Titans defense, I mean, it's unbelievable. 6 of 8 games, they've given up a completion of 40 yards or more. 3 games with 65 yards or more. Most of the damage is from the slot. Judy is 10th in deep targets and 12th in slaps from the slot. Or I sound like you, Jorge, with the snaps from the slots. And I mean, again, De'Ami Brown. I just tell people that every time I think of the Tennessee Titans secondary. He got 4 targets, 2 receptions, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns on just 12 snaps. You can get work, and Judy is the perfect weapon. And I like Wilson a lot as a fantasy quarterback. The rest of the way, Denver can't run it. I mean, they're going to have to move to throwing the ball more, and I think Russ may even have to run a little bit more too. So I do like Wilson kind of moving forward, but I love Judy today. He's one of my favorite plays in DFS. He's in most of my lineups.
So full disclosure, we have our rankings here up on fantasyandframes.com for offense and IDP and half PPR scoring. And as we're getting news of injuries and whatnot throughout the morning, we'll be, of course, updating them and finalizing them at 12 o'clock at noon. So as we have it right now, Russell Wilson, I have him as my QB7. Jerry Jeudy, I have him as my wide receiver 19. So I'm feeling pretty good about this matchup here. On the defensive side, on the other side of the ball with Ryan Tannehill, let me just say, I am a huge and always will be a huge Robert Woods fan, but I think it's safe to say his time has kind of come to an end where he's at right now, and that's kind of sad. And I say that because Treylon Burks just got activated, I want to say a couple days ago. I'm not sure if he's actually playing today, but again, a target. A target, potentially. But outside of Derrick Henry, I'm just not feeling comfortable recommending anybody in this Titans offense. Austin Hooper, he got a couple receptions last week, but nothing that I think I would write home about per se. On the flip side, we talked about Wilson, we talked about Judy. Latavius Murray versus Melvin Gordon. If you had to recommend one, Jonathan, who would you recommend?
Honestly, I would recommend someone else. It's like as we said before, it's just not how we can see the Broncos winning this game. If they're going to win it, it's going to be through the air. As you said before, the Titans are much more susceptible through the air than on the ground. So I would need to have a look at the rankings, but it's going to be a mess between those three. You're flipping a coin as to who is going to be the guy that might get them in the end zone. I think it was Latavius Murray in London, but then it could have been Melvin Gordon. They've now got Chase Edmonds as well. So it's right. Honestly, I would just recommend anyone else in for that range.
So breaking news, Julio Jones has got a touchdown on a 31-yard bomb. So congrats, Julio, for getting on the board there. Your leading scorers for the Munich game, Julio Jones with 9.6, Tom Brady with 7.2, Mike Evans with 5, DK Metcalf with 3.4, Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette. Rachaad White actually started the game this week. Both have you at 2.6 and 2.4. So that's where we're at with that. Geno Smith, 1.6 points. Kenneth Walker, 1.3. Very interesting so far for Seattle. Going to the other side of the ball here. Man, Nate, who's left at defense for the Titans? I mean, we got Justin Simmons out. We got Bud Dupree out. We got a lot of players out here. David Long, I want to say, has been wearing the green dot. Shout out to Mike Wollert, one of the co-hosts here at the Shoot the Gap podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. He's been rushing the passer. He's been having his tackle upside. Kevin Byard, are we buying Kevin Byard this week against this Broncos secondary? Or is it more like, I could find better value elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've seen the whole season out of Kevin Byard. It's been a little bit of a letdown as a whole. Consistent play hasn't been quite the forte this year, like we've seen previous years, where he can stack the score sheet with the interceptions and the tackles, and then the upside for the occasional sack. I think that's probably a product of just decimation, and he's been banged up a little bit here and there. Obviously, no Malik Hooker, which is big because Malik Hooker is who they would most likely have put on Greg Dulcich. And since he's been out, we saw that with Travis Kelce, that they moved Kevin Byard into that role a little bit, quasi-successfully a little bit. Andrew Adams is a safety that's getting a little bit more play. PFF likes him as far as rankings. I don't really care too much from an IDP standpoint. But you're right. David Long, linebacker, with no Zach Cunningham, Dylan Cole, Joe Schobert's still a name that's on practice squad and maybe might get elevated, or he might have. There's not a ton of information about that, which tells me I shouldn't even be worried about it. And Danico Autry, you asked about pass rushers. That's it, brother. And it's not looking good, man, personally, for any Tennessee.
I'm glad you brought up Dulcich. She's I ineptly forgot to mention he's also my tight end starter of the week. So I'm a big fan of him, and the Broncos or the Titans. They're giving up fantasy points. They're hemorrhaging points to everybody, to be honest with you. So it's really a good matchup for Denver for the defensive side of the ball. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Nick Benino. What are his thoughts on his play? He came out. He had a pretty good week 2 weeks ago. Had a forced fumble, a sack, 2 solo tackles. But where are we standing? Is it Josie Jewell is basically the diehard guy you're standing by this week and going forward?
Yeah. I mean, we expect Tennessee. I don't care if they have Treylon Burks back or not. I don't think they're going to be a pass-heavy attack. I think it's going to be Derrick Henry again. So give me Josie Jewell. If you think that Denver's going to get ahead and that requires Tennessee to throw the ball more, if that's the case, then you can look Nick Benito's way. The only other pass rusher they have healthy is Jonathan Cooper, and that's not a good sign. So, yeah, I like the upside of Jewell is like a high-end LB1, and everybody else on that team is just, no Justin Simmons, so that just even depletes it even more so.
All right. Let's stick with you, Nate. We're going to our next matchup here, Jacksonville at Kansas City. Man, you and I were like, okay, and I think a lot of us in the IDP community were, okay, whichever linebacker is facing the Texans or is facing the Titans, fire them up because they're going to go get Derrick Henry. We saw that they were running away from Derrick Henry this week. But the Jaguars have 2 really good inside linebackers. Do you think this is kind of like a bounce back week for the linebacker position versus a team that's let me back up a little bit. Not talking about the Titans, going back to the Chiefs here.
Right.
2 inside linebackers, Luakun and Lloyd. Could they both have success here against this Chiefs running game that's primarily been CEH and Pacheco, splitting carries here and there?
I think it's probably going to be their upside in the short to intermediate pass game, personally. I think Devin Lloyd might have I've read and heard that that's what they're wanting to do is set up Devin Lloyd against Kelsey in a lot of the one-on-ones. If that's the case, you can obviously expect a little bit of a higher floor for Devin Lloyd. Aluakon's always going to be there. Casey's not, I'll be interested to see what happens, without Mecole Hardman. If they try to look deep, if Jacksonville gives them that option, Tennessee, we saw last week, do the one thing that was the Achilles heel for Kansas City last year, is that shell cover 2. And if that's what Jacksonville wants to do this week, which I don't know if they can, I think they can, but it's like, you get a pissed off Kansas City team and they're going to want to do something as far as retaliation. But I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think that both linebackers on both sides of the ball have upside just from the pure volume that's going to be in front of them.
Now let's go to the offensive side of the ball here. Let's go to Les. Man, Christian Kirk, man, he's just proven to be a good receiving option week in and week out here. Are we feeling good about him again this week as a wide receiver 2 potentially?
In the shootout, yeah. Potential shootout. A little worried about the weather over there in Kansas City. But, yeah, he has the potential there out of the slot.
Let's go to Keith, DFS. Who you liking in this week's matchup with the Chiefs and the Jaguars?
Pretty much everybody. I think that if you're looking for like flyers, with Mecole Hardman being out, Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore, one of them is going to be involved. Jaguars give up a lot of big plays. I love Schuster this week at his price at 6,000. He's consistently been one of like the best guys in daily fantasy at his price. I think he scored 18 or more in like 4 straight. And then again, I told you earlier I loved ETN, but I love Lawrence and a Kirk stack this week. I think, Lawrence has scored 17 points or more in like 5 straight. He's running. I think he scored 4 more points, just with his legs the last 4 or 5 games. And that just, makes his floor a little higher. And Kirk, and something that doesn't matter, but me and Joe love a trend. He has been much better on the road, and so has Lawrence for whatever reason. And I do like trends, and they're cheap. I mean, you can stack them for, I believe it's 5,100, or excuse me, Lawrence is 5,400 and Kirk is 5,900. That's probably my favorite stack this week. And then you could have like Barkley, ETN if you want to add a Waddle or a Hill to your lineup. It just gives you a lot of flexibility, in other places.
Yeah, I'm a big Juju Smith-Schuster fan this week. I have him as my start of the week. I think since week 5, he's been the wide receiver 5 or 6 in fantasy points per game. You look at week 6 through 8, he has 13 targets, just shy of Travis Kelce's mark, which just goes to show you how involved he's been in the passing game here. So, I love that. Anybody else? You mentioned Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore. Man, people who got Kadarius Toney last week and then started him, like that was a pure, like you're swinging for the fences thing here this week. Would you have the guts to start Kadarius Toney this week, Jonathan, against the Jaguars, in which should be a shootout of a game?
Let me have a look at where he's ranked. I feel as though there are going to be
better options.
If that's where your team is at, it's either a really, really deep league or your team is absolutely decimated by injuries and bye weeks. So I think
if you're looking for a home run, though, maybe, right, Jonathan, like at the wide receiver 3 position, say you're in a matchup where it looks like you're going to lose. I do think there's a chance that like Toney can have big. Hardman had scored Nate, in like 4 straight games. They used Toney a little bit in week 1, which I thought was a big deal. He got 2 targets, and I think he was on the field for like 10 snaps. So I just think there's a chance he gets used more today with Hardman out. And again, I mean, he's a talented dude. He doesn't need a lot to put up points. To me, it's all, it's always about the situation, the circumstances. But I'm saying, like, if you need like a wide receiver 3 and you're in a match that, you need a boom play, I wouldn't be afraid to roll the dice. And I think it's more likely, right, Nate, you're a Chiefs fan, that Toney gets involved more in that Hardman role than Moore, because Moore's done nothing, right?
Yeah, no, he hasn't. And I'm still hesitant with Kadarius Toney involvement. Like you said, I mean, he played 17 snaps last week. Saw 3 targets on that. And they just want to get him involved. Or I'm sorry, he played 8 snaps. Sorry. It was interesting because they started off, the first play, I believe, went to him. And I thought, okay, maybe we're going to have something here. And then they never looked his direction again. And a lot of that could have been just, I think maybe they expected them to be up a little bit against Tennessee and have a little more time for Gidget and Gizmos or Gizmos and Gadgets. Yep. Shit. Early.
Close enough.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which was the opposite, because we got neither of either, so it didn't really matter. But you're right. Yeah, I think Kadarius Toney is by far the more new shiny new toy, kind of the player that would fill that McCole Hardman role.
They need a guy on their offense, though, right, that can scare a defense by taking the top off. Like, isn't that what makes the Chiefs offense truly hum? And that's why Hardman's been so effective, in my opinion, the last 4. I mean, look at it. Like, he scored a touchdown, I think it's in 4 straight weeks. Yeah. And I just think that there's a good chance, whether it's Toney or Moore, whichever one of them gets to take over a majority of those Hardman, plays, they could score today. I really think that. And I just think Toney's more likely because he's played a league in the year. A year in the league. And, I mean, he was really good with the Giants when he's healthy. It's just, can he stay healthy? But when he plays, dude's scary, man. Like, he's a crazy athlete.
Yeah,
I was going to say
Kadarius Toney, Pacheco, or Rachaad White, to me, it seems like those are the guys we're talking about all year. And it'll be like week 15 in the fantasy playoffs, and they finally pop, and we'll be like, "I told you so! I told you!"
Exactly.
Just waiting for them to do their thing. It's a tough one to trust. That's a tough play to trust.
It's interesting. I mean, you see Hardman was getting a lot of like jet sweep stuff and little pop passes. So it'll be interesting to see who they, as you say, Keith, like who they will give that to. Like, but problem is, it could be anyone. It could be MVS. It could be.
I'm not saying like you should start him by any means. No. I'm saying that like I know that a lot of times I look at a matchup, and if it looks like I'm going to lose, I might be more willing to take a number 3 guy who is normally just steady Eddie and put in a guy that, yeah, he might have 2 points, but he could also have 15, 20, just because I know that's probably what I'm going to need to win. And in that situation, and again, for DFS as well, like I like taking, the risk with Tony. I think he's 5,000 on DFS. But for sure, that's what I'm saying. I don't know who's going to get it. I lean more towards Tony because they traded for him. They obviously wanted that weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think beyond this, he's a great stash. Just if you've got a spare bench slot, and he's available, throw him in there, just at the back of your bench, because as Keith said, he could pop off at some point over the next few weeks.
Got a question here from Ryan H on YouTube: Brandon Ayuk or versus the Chargers, or Josh Palmer versus the 49ers. Palmer, he had 10 targets last week, 8 receptions, 100 yards receiving. That equated to 14.6 half PPR points. Brandon Ayuk, we all know what's going on in San Francisco. It's kind of turning into the McCaffrey show here and there. That being the case, if we go back and look at his performance last week, go back to week 8. Pulling it up here, 6 receptions, 6 targets, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Kind of a good problem to have, right, guys? We're hoping for the upside again play of Palmer, but I feel like for me, like the consistency of Ayuk is kind of what's kind of drawing me towards him this week. Les, what are your thoughts here, Ayuk or Palmer?
First off, that's a great question from Ryan H. I've been staring at it for a while, trying to figure out my answer. But I would go Palmer with Keenan Allen out and Mike Williams still out. He had a slow start last week against the Falcons, but he finally got going for 105 as the number 1 receiver. And like you said, with all the weapons that Jimmy G has, he does have a good rapport with Ayuk, but I'm just not confident in that consistency with Kittle. Debo's back, and CMC.
Niners Shanahan's the best probably in the NFL picking on bad linebackers. He seems to run right at the bad linebacker every play. The Chargers have arguably, other than the Giants, the worst linebackers in the NFL. I think the Niners are going to run it down the Chargers' throat. I really do. The Chargers still struggle against the run. And for that reason, and again, obviously with Allen and Williams being out, I think Palmer by a decent amount, just because I think the 49ers are going to run it a lot Sunday night, and they're going to get back to that kind of football, because that's why they made that trade, is they want to get back to where we're going to run. They'll run with Debo, they'll run with McCaffrey, and then they'll do the occasional play action. Ayuk will be great for big plays, but it's just Palmer, I think, is going to get the volume, and hopefully, the Niners are up, some jump scores, which I always love.
I was going to say, I think you've got to think about game script here, because as you said, they are playing against each other. I feel as though the Niners are going to win this one. I actually think fairly comfortably in the end, and so I think there's going to be a negative game script for the Chargers to be throwing it more. So yeah, I agree with you too, and I would go Palmer as well.
Good stuff, guys. We got another question here from Johnny T80. Great stuff as always. Thank you very much, sir. PPR league, Jamal Williams or Tony Pollard? For me, I don't really care what kind of format it is. I love Tony Pollard. We look at the reception or targets here for the Cowboys, 9 on the season, that is. Tony Pollard with 19, Zeke with 8. So, I like what they're doing with Tony Pollard. Ezekiel Elliott, I feel like his time is starting to, if not already, come crashing to a halt here. I saw you kind of wince a little bit there, Keith. What are your thoughts here?
No, I'm with you. I was wincing at, you said his time is, coming up. It's like everybody but the Dallas Cowboys coaching staff realizes that the more talented running back you're not giving the ball to more. But from what I've seen, reports are, and I have a buddy who's a big Cowboys fan, the buzz in Dallas is they're going to sit Elliott. Like if they have any hesitation whatsoever before game time, they're going to sit him despite him having some limited practices this week. But even if he does, it's such a juicy matchup. Pollard's had 8 carries or more in 7 straight, double-digit points in 3 or 4, third in yards per touch. Second in yards per reception, 8th in yards per route run. He's got all these great metrics, and the Packers have allowed in their last 5 games a rush or reception to a running back of 20 or more, 9 of those in that span, 5 of them for 30 yards or more. And I mean, think about it. Pollard is one of the most explosive backs in football. I would be shocked if he doesn't have at least one run of 20, 30 yards or more. And if that's a score, I mean, it just, again, it's a good matchup. I don't, again, you're talking about, I'd be interested to hear like who his other back is if you're not starting both of those guys, because Williams is a great play too versus the Bears. But if you're forcing me to take one, I would take Pollard for the upside. I think he could have a monster game, especially if Elliott's out.
Yeah, I think Pollard's going to have an absolutely huge game. I mean, Devondre Campbell's out, Rashawn Gary's out. The Packers are just decimated at the moment, and they were already terrible against the run before.
They couldn't tackle before then, yeah.
Yeah, they're 31st in rush DVOA. I mean, I'm not much of a gambling man, but I would be putting a lot of money on whatever the over is on Pollard yards and touchdowns. Because yeah, I feel as though if Zeke is out, or at very minimum he's going to be limited, then yeah, I think Pollard's going to have a huge game.
Nate, let's go to our next question here from Pick and Rick. Do I trade away Pierce and Olave for Mixon and Terry F1 McLaurin? I'm not going to say that other name in PPR scoring.
Man, I
do it, Pick and Rick. Do it.
God, I like. So that's the thing is, I was saying now I'm never going to go on record and be like, I expected Mixon to have that week, but the words did come out that Mixon could have a very Alvin Kamara-esque type game at some point. Now, again, I'm never saying it was the 5 touchdown. And I know every Dameon Pierce
I thought you did say that he was going to score 5 touchdowns last week.
I mean, it might have said 4, but I don't think I'd give myself 5. I'm not crazy. I got to say, I think I don't know if I would. I think Mixon and Pierce are close enough to me. And I think Olave is, that's a really tough. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, me too. I wouldn't make that trade. That's.
Yeah.
But I can understand both sides. I don't think that's.
Yeah.
I think that is strictly, at the end of the day, I think the value for the two, if you're looking for trade gains and losses, I think that they're so close at the end of the year that it's almost like a lateral move. It's just which one do you feel more comfortable doing? And Les said do it because he clearly, sees one of the two sides that he's more comfortable with. Either you have a higher ceiling for Mixon or you think the floor is going to fall out for Dameon Pierce. And he was one of your sell highs, right? Isn't that probably why?
Don't be slandering Dameon Pierce now, guys.
Hey, that's less. Don't.
Hey, here you go, right here, y'all. Like I said, I'm buying I'm ordering the Dameon Pierce jersey right after the podcast. I love Dameon Pierce, but I think they're going to start shutting him down soon. I mean, we're getting the number 1 pick this year, next year in the draft, and I mean, I don't think they want to run him to the ground. I told Pick and Rick to make the trade, but I really think the weak link in this trade is Terry McLaurin because of his quarterback situation. So I probably wouldn't do the deal either after further review. Michael Thomas is out for the season, so Olave is just going to keep cooking. So I wouldn't do that deal.
The thing that you've got to just one quick thing on Joe Mixon. I was just having a look at his playoff schedule. I'm assuming that this is a
brutal
redraft. Well, yeah. So they're playing Week 15 Tampa Bay, Week 16 New England, Week 17 Buffalo. So that's 3 of the toughest matchups. So it's something that obviously we're getting to that stage of the season. So yeah, it's something to bear in mind there.
I want to show some, and this is going to be kind of difficult to see. This is a picture that Murph from 5 Yard Rush found at the game here. For those who can't see, it's a Russell Wilson jersey, and on the name tag it says 2 first-round picks. That is super clever. I love it. I got a DST question here. Rams defense, Arizona. Budda Baker is out. Both quarterbacks not expected to play. Rams at home. Whose house? Rams' house.
Are they both now not expected to play?
That was the report this morning, or by morning I mean midnight, but I have not heard anything.
I'm going to check that right now because if so, I like both of these defenses.
Let's go here. Well, Keith, you look that up. We have McBeard here, who's a recent subscriber. Thank you very much. And for those who are listening and watching, please head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe there, as well as all our channels on social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. We put out a lot of content there, so we'd appreciate the follow and support. Thielen, Cooks, Pittman, bench one. So this may be a hottish take. I am recommending that Pittman gets sat this week, but considering Thielen's inconsistency for this particular season, for this particular question, I kind of would roll Pittman and Cooks if Cooks does actually play versus the Giants. Oh, sorry, that's not the question. The question is who you're going to bench.
Right.
I'm benching Thielen. Anybody else have a differing?
I mean, I guess
Cooks would be my guy to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nate.
No, I mean, I don't know if it makes a huge difference if it's half full or standard. I mean, standard would change a little bit of things because Thielen can't score for some reason. But yeah, I'm probably sitting. I just don't know if I trust Cooks. At least the other two have one thing on their side is they haven't missed practice and they haven't been disgruntled and angry. And I know the clear answer could be squeaky wheel gets the grease. This could be the, Brandon Cooks 12 target show, but I don't know. I don't think they give it to him.
I actually did forget, though. I heard this morning the Giants, they blitz as much as any team in the NFL. Believe it or not, that is what Mills is best against. If you look at his best games this year, they have been against teams that blitz often. So if that's the case, actually, I am going to pivot and I'll agree with you. I'd go without Thielen. Because, Cooks hadn't done anything, but I did hear this morning that Mills' numbers are best against the blitz. And Giants do blitz like more than any team in football, right?
Yeah, 39% blitz percentage.
Got a IDP question here, Nate. Love it.
What?
Yeah, I know. From Michael Pelton over on the YouTube. Cameron Curl, Hufanga, DeMar Hamlin, pick 2. So, so for my rankings, I have Curl at 7, Hufanga at 12, and Hamlin at 13. So, man, I really like what Hamlin has been doing the past couple weeks, but I think Hufanga has just been showing it for a little bit longer here. So I would go, I'd go Curl and Hufanga. What about yourself?
I would agree with that. I have Hamlin the lowest ranked.
Then we got Hollywood Titan here from Shoot the Gap, as well as his podcast IDP Nation. He's also agreeing Curl and Hufanga. We got here. Same person, Michael Pelton. He has a dynasty question. He's looking for a trade. AJ Dillon and Garrett Wilson for Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan, could that be a play that could? Is this a believable trade? And by believable trade, I mean obviously for this league, it's going to happen. But would you give up Jonathan Taylor for AJ Dillon and Garrett Wilson?
Before he answers, Jorge, may I interject real quick with one little question that I have for everybody?
Sure.
From what we've seen out of Jonathan Taylor on the whole season, for the rest of season, are you going to kind of take that and let it weigh on your shoulders? Or are you going to take that performance?
Cause the players gonna play, and the haters gonna hate, baby. I'm just gonna shake it off. Heartbreakers gonna break, and the fakers gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna shake it off.
Are you gonna let it shake? Are you gonna shake it off and look rest of season?
He feels better. They beat Missouri. They scored 14 points on Missouri in the last 4 minutes, up 30 points. Tennessee fans feel good about themselves today.
They did play better against Missouri than Georgia did.
But go Dogs.
We do things dirty here, especially with Hollywood when it comes to Taylor Swift, his favorite performer. Anyhow, AJ Dillon, Jonathan, would you make this trade?
I'm really struggling with this one. I was just having a quick look on Keep Trade Cut. I know that it's kind of Keep Trade Cut is a little flawed, but it's a good website to kind of understand how How people kind of view the player values, and this actually has it as a win for the Wilson Dillon side.
Interesting.
Which I thought was quite interesting. I didn't expect it to be like that. I feel as though you could get. I really like Garrett Wilson, but I feel as though you could get someone better than AJ Dillon. Dillon was someone I was really high on coming into the season. I thought that they would, utilize him and Jones really effectively, but they're just not. And I don't think I can see Dillon becoming the number one in Green Bay, even if Jones leaves. I think they probably, there's the running back class is deep next year. So I really like Garrett Wilson, but I would probably look for something else other than AJ Dillon.
So Pick and Rick was the one. We're going to his question next. His second question. He said, trade away Pearson Olave for Mixon and Scary Terry. Oh, damn it. I did it. Terry F1 McLaurin.
Mm-hmm.
He follows up with saying, I'm a little worried that Pierce get injured. Don't play scared.
I mean, I will say in his defense, that's very fair because Pierce has not seen more than 100, and I think it's like 25 touches in his career. That was really the knock and why I look so smart, and everybody else who was down on Pierce, coming into the draft don't look quite as smart, was because, in fairness, Florida's coaching staff was like, we're not going to give him the ball. And now he's getting it like 20-plus carries, and he's playing a longer season. So I do think that's a fair concern. But, man, that dude is unbelievable, and he keeps getting better. And they have a good schedule the rest of the way. They don't have a lot of tough run defenses left on their schedule. And, I mean, let's face it, they pretty much figured out the only way we can move the ball in this offense is give it to Pierce a lot. And he's catching passes.
Yeah, I think my concern with that, to Pick and Rick's point, is I think what Pierce is like fifth in the league with the most touch, with the fifth most touches in the league as a rookie. No other rookie is like, other than like Travis Etienne, and he's technically not even a rookie, but he's getting the ball a lot as a rookie, and I'm just wondering if they start winding him down.
Let's go back. Good point.
They are. It does look like they're both out. They said that Stafford is. I mean, it would be shocking if he plays at this point. And what I read about Murray was the best quote I saw was iffy at best. So it does look like they're both out. So go ahead, Rick.
Sorry, Ryan. I'd go Rams personally. That'd be the DST I'm going for. All right, let's get back to until we get more questions here. Let's get back to our game by game breakdown, looking at both sides of the ball on offense and for IDP. And the next game we have here is down in South Beach. Got Cleveland, Miami. Cleveland, I mean, it's, I feel comfortable in 2 quarterback leagues or in super flex leagues rolling out Jacoby Brissett. I just do. He's just been so good. Not so good, but he's been so consistent getting into the upper teens and fantasy point production. So I would feel good about him in this matchup. Obviously, Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt is one that just he baffles me because, this running game should be a 1-2 tandem, 1-2 punch, and it's really become the Nick Chubb show. And should even be. In the which it should be, but at the same time, you have Kareem Hunt for a reason. He's there to help, siphon off some of the carries so you keep Nick Chubb fresh. And to be fair, Kareem Hunt has been getting a lot of work in the red zone, but that just hasn't been capitalizing into touchdowns. One would hope that eventually corrects itself as the season goes on. But for me, Hunt is bordering on flex at best. And even then, I'm kind of wondering whether or not I have a better wide receiver, depending if I'm playing in a half PPR, full PPR league, to take his place. For the Dolphins, we saw Jeff Wilson come in first game after being traded, lead the team in touches. But let's not forget Raheem Mostert's still there. This linebacking core for the Browns, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he's out this week. Deion Jones should see some uptick there in the middle of the field in terms of tackle volume for IDP. But what does that mean for Raheem Mostert? I'm not about to dump Raheem Mostert here. I think he has a bounce back game this week. I think both the running backs for the Dolphins have a pretty good game this week. We look at obviously you're starting Tyreek Hill, you're starting Jalen Waddle. Is there anybody I'm missing? David Njoku is out this week at tight end, and Harrison Bryant's taking his place here for Cleveland. Probably not. Let's go. Let's do a DFS question here, Keith. Is anybody for this game jumping out to you, whether it's a bargain or a median play, or do you go high price?
Yeah, we both love Tua. He is 6,600, I believe, this week. It was both me and Joe's expensive tier play. If you look at his last 4 games, and I don't really count one of them, which is the Steelers game, because they were just trying to make sure that he was walking by the end of it. In his last 3 full games, other than the Steelers, he's thrown 12 touchdowns in those 3 games, at least 3 touchdowns in each one of them, and an average of 380 yards per. This offense is really difficult when they have Tua, Waddle, and Hill. And I think the Wilson addition, he's another play I really like this week. I'm with you about Mostert. It's just Mostert on DFS is 500, 600 more. And Wilson got more touches the first week after the trade. So I would rather take Wilson for $500-$600, cheaper when it's probably gonna be like a 55-45 split, which is like what it was last week. But Tyler has reminded us this Cleveland run D is bad. So both Wilson and Mostert have a chance to really torch them. The question is, will they? Are they just going to throw? Because that's kind of what they do. But I think people will be low owned on Tua too, because Lamar didn't do much, against Cleveland. But I think they threw it 10 times in the second half because they're just trying to maintain that lead. And obviously Burrow, he ended up putting up decent stats, but they looked awful. They were down from the beginning. They only ran it 8 times. So I think that would make Tua be a little less owned, but he should be more than 6,600. And then also really like Waddle. I'm never going to tell somebody not to play Hill. And if you're looking for the flyer, this week, Detroit Beastie, who came on the show, Chris Robin, he really does like Bryant, to your point. The only thing I would temper people on is last week he was on the field a lot, but he was blocking predominantly. And I think the Browns may look at he's not the receiving tight end that Njoku is, so he's probably better suited to be here blocking. And one other play Chris liked from this game was he also had Jacoby Brissett. And I do like a Brissett-Cooper stack, which I think it'd be like $11K to have both of them. And then again, like we've been talking about, you get Barkley, ETN, Waddle, all these other expensive guys in your lineup. So I think this is going to be one of the more high-scoring games. And in DFS, one of the best things you can do is try to locate that game and at least, make sure you have 4 or 5 of the guys in that game. So if they go off, you can score a ton of points.
Hey, Les, we got a question back here from Tootsie Pop 6 on YouTube. Chase Claypool, who got robbed from that pass interference call last week close to the end of the game last week, or Jahan Dotson returning from a hamstring injury for Monday Night Football. Before we get to you for this question, a lot of things to take into consideration is, you have to worry about the whole Dotson that is playing on Monday Night Football. 1, 2, his first game back from a hamstring injury. 3, we know the rapport that Wentz had with Dotson. I don't know what the rapport is that Heineke has with Dotson. I haven't seen that from the practice reports. On the flip side, Claypool, they brought him over for a reason. He's a big play target. This should be a fun game in Detroit, for Chicago and Detroit. What are your thoughts here, Les?
So Claypool is my pick for everything you said, but also, Claypool is the number 1 now, I think, in Chicago. They're going against the Lions. First game with the team, he had 6 targets. And you just pointed out all the things not to like about Dotson coming off injury, doesn't have a rapport with the quarterback yet. They're playing the Eagles on top of that, one of the better pass defenses in the league. So I'm going Claypool there.
That's true. We talked about IDP for the Browns, Deion Jones, Myles Garrett, obvious starts there. And I have Deion Jones as one of my starts for IDP this week. Linebacker, Nate, there are a couple other Dolphins here that for your chasing upside piece that you're kind of interested in, as well as guys you were talking about on your IDP waiver wire. Landon Roberts jumps out as somebody that, he played more last week. What are your thoughts on Landon Roberts for this week's matchup versus the Browns?
I think it's a coaching decision to switch up roles. I think Landon Roberts from last when Mike and I were talking, he's taken the green dot, seeing his playing time go up 45%. Jerome Baker, on the other hand, saw his 91% snap rate drop down into, I think, the 70s. And so you're seeing Roberts on the field. Here's at the end of the day, I don't like Landon Roberts. I don't think he's a great player. The hype was there last year, and I bit, got hooked, and luckily it was catch and release, and so I can forget about it and then go back in this year because opportunity should be there. There's no doubt. We know Cleveland's not going to be too heavily involved with going deep and getting outside of the hashes, but I do think that Landon Roberts has that double-digit tackle upside. Assisting him will be Eric Rowe, who since Rowe came in, Brandon Jones, as I said in the piece, and you and I both agree, tier, because we love Brandon Jones. And what he was doing is playing line scrimmage, that sweet spot, and Eric Rowe stepped in very well. And as a result of doing so, Javon Holland, the Dolphins coaching staff feels comfortable letting Holland stay deep. And if that's the case, and you can give me Landon Roberts, Eric Rowe up front with Christian Wilkins, they're going to see a heavy dose of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I probably should have reinverted the roles, but you get the idea. I want to give Hunt his due. And I think that both have that tackle upside. I will say, I know if I'm a little late to the party, did you guys talk about the Cleveland wide receivers yet this week?
We mentioned Amari Cooper. Is there any other wide receivers that we should be paying attention to?
Dude, Donovan Peoples-Jones has been very involved in that offense the last couple weeks, like to the point where I don't love him, but I gotta like what I've seen. I mean, if you look, what is it? He's had in the last 4 weeks now, 5 weeks, 9 targets, 7 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets with 80 yards, 70 yards. I mean, no touchdowns, but you throw a touchdown on top of any of those weeks, and you have a top 24 week out of them. So I'm not saying I love him, but I think it's a name. I was wondering if you guys had any opinion on him that I might have missed.
I actually wanted to ask about him because I've got a start-sit question around him. So I've got so there's 2 flex spots. So I need to bench one between Rondale Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Curtis Samuel. I've got Peoples-Jones on the bench.
Did you say it was PPR or not, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's full PPR.
I would probably lean towards Moore and Samuel just because they've consistently got targets. And I think Colt McCoy starting actually is going to raise Moore's value because, I mean, he runs the underneath, short stuff. And Colt McCoy is like captain check down a lot of times lately, just trying not to make mistakes. I can't sit Rondale Moore right now in a PPR. But I would understand if you want to go Peoples-Jones over Samuel because with Dotson coming back, how is that going to change? But Samuel's got the ball, I think, in every game, like at least 5 times, right? So I'm going to go with somebody that's, been getting targets for 10 weeks over somebody who, they need to score a touchdown first. Then I'll get fully on board.
Yeah, let's go to Les's favorite matchup of the week. Probably we got the Texans, we got the Giants. We talked about Damian Pierce a lot. Dude's a baller. The question is if from Les's standpoint and from people in the chat here on YouTube and has been when is that going to come to an end? Do they take him out as the season goes on and they keep going downhill, if that is what happens? I'm not saying that is going to happen. I'm just hypothetically speaking. But for right now, he's playing, so I'm firing up Damian Pierce, Brandon Cooks. Nate, you alluded to it earlier. Disgruntled, hasn't practiced that much, but is making the trip to New York. What can you really make of that situation? Some tight end last week, who it was not Brevin Jordan. I forget who it was, but caught a touchdown, got the first touchdown pass of the game. So don't know what to make of the tight end position there. On the flip side, I wrote in my start and sit that if you don't have a better option, I'm sitting Daniel Jones. I understand he gets the scrambling yards, but the defense for the Texans at every level, whether it's the line, the linebackers, the corners, the safeties, all have played an instrumental role in pass rushing the past few weeks. Coincidentally, one of my defensive line starts is Jerry Hughes, who's been moving all over the defensive line as of late and got 2 sacks off of Jalen Hurts. And I wrote up in my piece here, which you can find over at fantasyandframes.com, people will say, well, Jalen Hurts still had a good fantasy game. Well, you know why Jalen Hurts had a good fantasy game? Because even though he was getting pressured and sacked 4 times and really couldn't do a lot, he had A.J. Brown, he has Dallas Goedert, he has Devonta Smith, he has weapons. Daniel Jones has Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's it, I feel. And, I feel like this is going to be more of a Saquon Barkley game versus the Texans. Keith, DFS, thoughts?
I love Pierce this week. He's 6,300. And this is where I love DK doing their data, which is, really just straight points. And the Giants are like 9th on DK in running back scoring. Well, it starts with they haven't faced a lot of teams that run the ball really well. And then on top of that, they just haven't given up a lot of touchdowns, but they can give up points. Pierce has eclipsed 100 yards in 5 of 6, scored in 4 of 6, and 14 or more points in 6 straight DK games. So again, at that 6,300 price, that's great. It's not going to be the freezing cold symbol next to it. The Giants give away the most breakaway runs in the NFL. In the last 6 games, Pierce's longest run, 36, 16, 22, 20, 75, 24. Giants' last 6 games, longest run, they've allowed 16, 49, 30, 16, 14, 46. He's saying 18 and a half rushing attempts a game. With how much the Giants give up big rushes, again, kind of like what I was talking about with Pollard. I'd be shocked if he doesn't break at least one big run. And the great thing about the Giants is they don't beat anybody or lose to anybody by more than a touchdown. So that means the game stays close. That allows Pierce to continue running. You don't have to worry about, say, the Texans getting down and they get in a throwing situation. But even if they do, Pierce is also seeing targets in the passing game. It's not consistent every week, but he's had 3 or more in 3 of the last 5. The other play real quickly I want to mention is Joe is really big on Daniel Jones. And the reason why is because he thinks that he's going to run a lot in this game. It's going to be one of those games because the Texans are so bad against the run that they're going to find ways to have designed running plays for Jones. He gets 70 yards of a score. I believe he's like 5,600 is what his price is this week, 5,700. And I understand what he's saying. I'm not crazy about that play because I just think it's going to be a lot of Barkley today. But I understand what he's saying. It has been that when they play bad run defenses, instead of really throwing it more, to your point, Jorge, when they're not running with Barkley, they'll run it with Jones. And then obviously, again, Barkley should be – you should find the 8,600 in DK unless you're playing in a massive field event.
Les, let me ask you a question here, and I'll make sure to ask you a Texans question. Don't worry. But Joe or Keith just brought up Saquon Barkley. Thinking ahead, next August draft season, McCaffrey, Barkley, are they your top 2 running backs after what you've seen so far this year? I know this is a long ways away, but is this what you're saying here from Saquon Barkley? He's been playing that well this year.
I think. Well, I didn't throw Eckler in there too, but those are my top 3. CMC. We'll see what roster decisions the Niners make. I think they got a lot of money thrown around all over the roster, but I like CMC number 1 and Barkley 2, and then maybe Eckler 3.
Now, this week for this matchup versus the Giants, Davis Mills, he had a pretty decent start to the game last week against Philadelphia. Do you think we see a little repeat of that this week, or do you think that was a 1-week anomaly?
I'm not high on Davis Mills, so but like I put in my sell high on Brandon Cooks, despite being a negative game script all year, Mills has thrown the 10th least amount of passes and completions on the season. They're just conservative offense despite being down. So I'm not high on that.
I got a we got an email just now from Michael Pelton, who asked us a couple questions earlier. He has subscribed to our show, so thank you very much for subscribing to us on YouTube. Let's go to the other side of the ball here, Nate. Start with Houston, and I think there are a lot of people we can talk about here for the Houston Texans. I brought up Jerry Hughes this week, but Christian Kirksey, Christian Harris. Last week I want to say they both got you double-digit fantasy points there. Kind of splitting hairs here, but like they feel like they're, at least for that 1 week, they were pretty on par with one another. Jalen Petrie, Jonathan Owens. Is there anybody out of everybody I just mentioned you feel uncomfortable sliding into your IDP spots this week?
Probably Christian Harris. The problem with all of those names you just mentioned is that they all are bad tacklers for the most part. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, and I haven't seen, it's been a splash play out of Christian Harris. He needed that forced fumble to break, 6 points. And so in week 8, he had 7 tackles. Week 9, he had 5. He's been on the field enough for the upside to be there. I just don't see, I don't see any of them actually. You take bad tackling and then you throw Saquon Barkley into the mix, and it just seems like that's a Jalen Petrie, Jonathan Owens type game more than anything. And I'm fine with both of those, to be honest. Let's see. I have Jalen Petrie, I know, pretty high up. I would say top 12. Yeah, he's 9 on my list. I don't know why it is I can't trust Jonathan Owens to be as high, but he's still a DB2 in my ranking.
Yeah,
I am at DB 26 just because like I said, that second level of Kirksey and Harris, I have them down into that LB. Like Kirksey, I have as an LB3, and Christian Harris, I have outside of like an LB5, 6, I believe is where I have him at right now. So yeah, LB 69.
And by the way, folks, you can catch all of our rankings for IDP as well as on offense and half PPR at fantasyandframes.com. They will be finalized by the 12 o'clock hour here, 1 hour till kickoff. So plenty of time for you to consult our rankings before you set your lineups. Let's go to our next game here. We got the Saints and the Steelers. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. TJ Watt has risen. Wow, that's sacrilege.
All that build up to get his name wrong.
I know. TJ Brown. Where did that come from? TJ Watt's playing. We don't know whether or not that's going to be on a limited basis or not.
He'll get all the snaps in, I think.
You do?
Yeah.
Because that makes the Steelers really appealing to me on DK.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We were talking about, or at least I was talking about last week on You Down with IDP, our joint IDP show we do with Club Fantasy. Miles Jack, he did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. Still don't know if he's currently slated to play or if he's still going to be not playing this week. If he does play, if Miles Jack does play, I kind of like him this week, especially with TJ Watt returning. I think this offense for the Saints kind of doesn't want to get to the outside and say hello to the All-Pro defensive player of the year last year. And Highsmith, when TJ Watt is on the field, plays really well, and I think that causes the running game for the Saints to be funneled up the middle, right up to the middle linebackers. And outside of Cameron Hayward, this interior defensive line for the Steelers, it's not exactly great at run stopping. But going back to offense for a second, Alvin Kamara, cool. Olave, cool. Is Taysom Hill cool, Keith?
No, he's not. And I mean that because I hate him playing the tight end position and just, 1 week he'll have 30 points and then he'll have 3 for the next month. I really like the Saints receivers today. Obviously, Olave for DFS, he's 6,800, but Jarvis Landry's back. And I think with Thomas out, like we talked about on the pod with at Detroit Beastie, Chris Robin, that, we did like Tre'Quan Smith. We liked Callaway because the Steelers are just a treasure trove to wide receivers. But with Landry back, I really like Olave and Landry. You can double stack them for like 10K, and I think they're going to have a big game. Just, again, for the reason I had so high on Olave, they've allowed The Steelers allowed 6 receivers on DK to score in the top 10 for the week. Only the Falcons have allowed more. He's seen 30 targets since week 6. He is number 1 in deep targets, 2nd in air yards, 4th in air yard share. He's literally a big play waiting to help happen. And just again, to remind people about the Steelers D, A.J. Brown last week, touchdowns, 27, 29, 39. Miami had 5 receivers with a reception of 18 yards or more. Gabe Davis, touchdowns of 98, 62. The Buffalo receivers had 4 other guys with a reception of 26 yards or more. 10 receivers with a reception of 20 yards or more in their first 4 games. I'd be shocked. Olave is arguably the best, big play receiver right now in football. I was so wrong about him and all the stuff this summer. I would be shocked if he doesn't have at least one big play against his D. Hearing Watt back for 100% does make me a little leery, because obviously that could mean that the Steelers' pass rush could be looking like it was week 1 versus Cincy, which looked terrifying. But I just think the Saints are a little bit better at the pass rush.
Jonathan, no more Chase Claypool. It's the Deontay Johnson and George Pickens show. If you had to pick one, who'd you roll out? And is it a clear cut DJ?
I think I'm still going Deontay. I mean, I've long been a Deontay Johnson fan, but it is going to be really interesting to see what that target distribution now looks like. I think they're both good plays today, as Keith has said, but Johnson is just more consistent. So if you're in a half or a full PPR, he's just got a much safer floor. But I mean, Pickens is going to be great over the second half of this season with the uptick that he should see in targets. Because I mean, Claypool was seeing, there were several games where he would see 6 or more targets. So and the other person not to forget is Pat Frymouth as well, because he should certainly in the red zone. He should see more targets as well. As nice. I see that Keith has just made a move in our staff league.
I just got the notification as well. I'm like, oh, what did you just do, Keith?
What have you done? Who have we just been talking about that you wanted
I put Josh Allen back in. I was thinking about it all morning because I was going to play Wilson. We talked about how much I like Russell versus or actually Jorge talked mostly about it. I love Wilson in Denver today against the Tennessee secondary that's trash. But I can't send Josh Allen. But I am going to also move Gabe Davis to my bench and start Lazard, because if I'm going to start Allen, I don't want them both to have a bad game. So that was why I made the move. And I'm playing Jorge today and desperately need a win. I'm 3-6, and I'm second in the league in points. This is bullshit.
You've been really unlucky. Unlucky.
I won in that league next year, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
It's a staff league, so you'll be there. Nate, for defense, Cameron Jordan is somebody who's been consistent. Demario Davis, who's one of my starts this week. No Pete Werner, out for multiple weeks. I believe it's Caden Ellis who may be stepping into his place. Had a 20% missed tackle rate last week in replace of Pete Werner. That's something that just, people shouldn't be worried about because the volume should be there, or is it just Demario Davis and bust or bust?
I mean, it's probably Demario Davis and bust. I mean, times are tough. You can look Ellis's way, but I don't want to force a square peg into a round hole for just because he's a linebacker that might see some snaps. And here's the thing is he's not that much better than a on paper horrendous Zach Bond, who could see 30% of the snaps, 35. And then you have a rotation piece between them. We shouldn't even mention Caden Ellis's name other than the fact that he's the person, he's the next one up. You know what I mean?
He is alive. He is a human being. Let's go to Indianapolis, or excuse me, Vegas.
Just before we move on from that game, just very, very quickly. Obviously, a lot of news about Jaylen Warren and the Najee Harris split up. He's not someone that I would play, but it's someone that I would look at the snaps today and see what's going on. If you've got a spare bench spot, throw him in there, and yeah, it's not an exciting play. It's not going to be an exciting play for the rest of the season, but he's someone that you can flex in if you're dealing with injuries down the stretch.
He's been good when given touches, a lot better than Harris. I mean, I think he had like 60 yards on 5 carries last time he played.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But I do want to give Jonathan thanks for last week's victory. I believe that
You need to thank Joe Mixon. That's who you need to thank.
Joe Mixon's not here right now, so you're going to be the best I got. So I'm going
I'll
to
pass on the message.
let you pass on the
Get
message.
in the locker
Thank
room
you.
and I'll give him a pat.
Tweet him out. Yeah, exactly. They say don't tweet at players. No, just don't tweet mean things at players. You tweet all the good things you want.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Vegas. Got the Colts. Got the Raiders. Got Jonathan Taylor returning to action. Got Sam Ellinger. Honestly, I'm not expecting a lot from this Colts offense. What I do want to see is how hard they play, how competitive they make it to a certain degree. With Jeff Saturday as the head coach, obviously that's a controversial hire for numerous reasons. On the flip side, talking about controversial hires, I think the better phrasing here is if do they retain Josh McDaniel after this year, 2-6? This is a playoff team that has added Devonta Adams, and look, they're decimated by injuries. Hunter Renfro's on IR, Darren Waller's on IR. Mm-hmm. It's become the Josh Jacobs show. So really, when you look at this matchup, it's really a battle of these running backs. I'm not too high on Michael Pittman this week. Is somebody else maybe high on Michael Pittman? Okay, why are you high on Michael Pittman this week, Nate?
Because this will be Matt Ryan will have 25 pass attempts this game.
Oh, you think he's playing?
I think he comes in after the first quarter. I think Ellinger throws a pick, does something just bad with the ball. Jeff Saturday says, enough of this stupidity. Let's go with, maybe not be sexy, but we're going to go with Matt Ryan. And the second half, Michael Pittman, who I'll go ahead and answer this as a result to Calvo. I'm saying Pittman because I think in the second half, Pittman has 5 catches for 70 yards.
And he did say Mixon was going to have 5 touchdowns last week. So you need to listen.
I am clairvoyant.
For the Raiders side, I think we talked about this. Matt Collins, is he somebody that you're starting this week, Jonathan?
I think he's a decent lower-end flex player. I mean, you mentioned that Renfro is out, Waller is out. So, obviously they're going to be throwing to Devontae Adams a lot. But, I think he's a solid sort of lower-end flex player. I've got a couple of leagues where I'm having to throw him in there because of injuries and bye weeks and whatever. And I'm not expecting a lot, but I don't feel awful about it. He's had some really big games so far this season.
So with all these peppering of targets to Devonta Adams, to Matt Collins, less, does that make you more, less, or indifferent when it comes to Derek Carr this week? And let's take this for an example of you had to start 2 quarterbacks. Is he somebody that you'd have as your second quarterback, or is he somebody that I think I can do better?
I mean, in a 2 quarterback league, I don't think you really could. Where would you go? But so I would start him. But I don't know with the injuries to Renfro and I don't know. I mean, Waller's been out the whole year anyway, so I could start Carr with confidence. Like Jonathan said, I'm a little higher on Matt Collins because of those bigger games that he had, and Renfro and Waller on the IR. So I could start Carr.
Cool. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. No Shaq, Darius Leonard. He's pretty much droppable at this point. I think he's on IR at least for a minimum 4 weeks. So it's really the Zaire Franklin show, who's been playing lights out for the Colts at the linebacker position. You want to talk about a linebacker that just lights up guys, solo tackle wise? This guy is that guy. You like hits? You watch some Zaire Franklin highlights on YouTube or watch the games. He's been playing great. Kenny Moore, somebody who for years has been a good high volume tackler, cornerback, who you normally go after safeties into your defensive back spot. But he had been a high volume tackling cornerback. This year didn't really start off well. He started to turn that around, but I think he had a little bit of a down week last week. Outside of Franklin, DeForest Buckner, who's defensive tackle, and maybe Kenny Moore. Is there anybody else for this Colts defense for IDP that we're interested in here, Nate?
Yeah, you can start Bobby Okereke. And honestly, I think Grover Stewart is an excellent play because for me, I don't know. I see this as a Raiders control the clock, run the ball game more than I see them airing it out to Hollins and Adams consistently. I think they're going to still get their targets, but I think they're going to lean a little heavier on this run. And unfortunately, it's probably not the best game for either DeForest Buckner or Grover Stewart. I can't see both having a good game, but I like Grover Stewart. Grover Stewart's very underrated. I mean, if you look from a defensive line standpoint on the season, he's borderline elite amongst interior defensive linemen, of course, especially in the tackle volume, and just a solid, underrated player that I want to mention his name simply because I think that he doesn't get the due respect that he deserves. I mean, hell, he has 48 total tackles on the season.
You gave him his due respect last week in your waiver wire article, and he gave you close to 12 fantasy points last week in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. So who you're talking about. On the flip side, for the Raiders, I'm actually really high on Duron Harmon, who's now becoming the new strong safety for the Raiders. They just got rid of Jonathan Abrams, and even during the preseason, Harmon, who's been a veteran, who's played for years, played with McDaniel in New England. There was a lot of talk that he was going to be challenging Abram. I don't want to say challenging Abram, but he had the coach's eye more than Abram. And obviously that's apparent because Jonathan Abrams just got released by the Raiders. And, with the linebacking situation, I kid you not, in the morning on Wednesday, I picked up Blake Martinez everywhere I could because, oh my God, Blake Martinez, he's available. I don't know why he's available in all these leagues I'm playing, and I'm going to go get him. And then by 2:00 in the afternoon, breaking news, Blake Martinez has retired from the NFL. And I'm like, damn it, now I have to go back and try to get the players that I dropped. It was a you-know-what show. That notwithstanding, obvious holes at the linebacker position. I don't know if Denzel Perryman is out or if he's still trending towards that whole questionable thing.
I'm looking at it right now, and it doesn't give any updates as far as he hasn't been ruled out yet.
So that concern.
Yeah, it's questionable because he's got him back-to-back limited participants on Thursday and Friday. So I think that he plays, but I don't necessarily. It wouldn't shock me. Does it feel like we've seen a lot more this year of the, hey, it looks like he's going to play, everything's trending positive, and then all of a sudden they're not playing. Like it feels like the reports are, I don't know, sketchy.
If anything, I'm noticing that they end up playing, but the utilization is severely down.
Yeah.
Which is why I like Duron Harmon as kind of a creeping up to the line of scrimmage, strong safety and helping against the run this week. Jayon Brown, if in a desperate pinch, linebacker. Max Crosby. Those are the guys that are kind of jumping out at me. Going to the 425 game, one of the 425 games here. They got Dallas and Green Bay, and I'm sorry, Jonathan, for what I'm about to say. Right. But this makes me utterly sick when I'm watching commercials on Fox, and it's like the Cowboys, the Packers, the rivalry renewed. No, it's not. This is going to be a squash of a game. This is not going to be like one of these classic Packers Cowboys games like from the playoffs a few years ago. Or this is the Cowboys are going to just. I feel bad for Green Bay. Like I feel bad as the human beings taking on these other human beings. Just it's going to be all right. Maybe I'm being a little bit much here. Aaron Jones got banged up, but he's going to be playing. Last week he got banged up last week, ankle injury, which I hear for running backs is not exactly a good thing. When given the opportunity with 2 touches at the goal line, AJ Dillon couldn't get it done against one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Alan Lazard should be back this week. Romeo Doubs is out for at least 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Robert Tonyan has not been anything to write home about at tight end. Who does Aaron Rodgers have to throw the ball to? And more important, and then who's actually going to be the guy who's going to be running consistently for the Packers? I don't know. There are a lot of question marks here, folks. Obviously, I'm fading Aaron Rodgers this week, not feeling good about him. Jonathan, You're the Packers fan. Give us hope for somebody on this Packers roster that you're starting this week.
So I think there are two. It's Aaron Jones, who obviously I think he's been limited during the week, but it is supposed to be playing. So Aaron Jones, look, I'm not excited about it, but he is their best player, and they should give him touches. I'm not saying that they will; they should. And then Alan Lazard, who has he's been really consistent. He has been one of the only good offensive players that they've had this year. But as you said, if they're not gonna do anything against the Lions, who are very clearly one of the worst defenses in the league, they're certainly not going to do anything against Dallas, who are one of the best, if not the best. So I'm not excited about anyone other than those two. I mean, as we mentioned before, they are really banged up this week. We already mentioned about Devondre Campbell, Rashawn Gary, Eric Stokes. Obviously, you mentioned Romeo Dobbs, Sammy Watkins out. So, yeah, I think this is going to be an absolute bloodbath. I'd love Tony Pollard in this game. I think he's going to have a huge, huge game. But yeah, it's. I mean, here I normally we get two games that are shown on TV, an early game and a late game, and then we get Red Zone here as well. So I normally just watch Red Zone, unless it's a Packers game. And this week I was like, I don't want the Packers to be on because I'm going to have to watch it. And of course, the Packers Dallas is the game that they're showing on Sky. I might just still watch Red Zone because I don't want to watch this game.
Let's go back to you. Let me ask you some fun questions here. Obviously, you're starting CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. What are your thoughts on Michael Gallup this week?
I need to see something from Michael Gallup before I start him. Definitely was definitely high on him this year. Especially after James Washington went out, and before the Dak injury. But I would not start him with confidence. Especially, the one thing about this game, we're predicting a bloodbath, but it is in Green Bay. The temperature is like 34 degrees. So I don't know. I'm taking the under on the game, and I don't think it's going to be as big of a blowout as it seems on paper.
Keith, what are some good DFS plays for this matchup?
I'm sorry. I'm distracted because of the turnover the Bucs just made. They ran two wildcat plays, and on the second one, having Brady out wide, they actually threw it to him. It was picked off going in to take the lead. Potentially they're 17-3, 21-3. Coaching is so bad right now in the NFL. What game are we talking about? I'm sorry. I got distracted. Packers Cowboys, right?
Keith, I thought you were laughing at my take, man.
No. Sorry. I was laughing at that trash I saw on TV. I'm like, I can't believe they just did that. I obviously we talked about Pollard early. Really like him. I love Dalton Schultz today. I know the matchup is not great, but he's 3,900. Every game he's played in this year with Dak, he's got at least 6 targets, at least 5 receptions. You're getting a guy that I think at a minimum is going to score 10 points at 3,900. He's somebody I'm putting in flex in a lot of lineups, playing 2 tight ends. So that way, again, I can try to get Barkley and Waddle, some of these more expensive guys. Jonathan, the other one I want to ask you about, and please don't think I'm crazy, but I kind of like Christian Watson today at 3,400 for DFS because they need him, right? Like Dobbs is out. Who else are they going to throw to? And again, for 3,400, if he scores 10 points or more, that's a boom play, right? If he could score like 15, 20 points or more, you're really doing good getting that out of 3,400. Do you like that at all, or am I crazy?
I'm as you can tell, I'm very pessimistic about today's game, so I'm not going to tell you it's a good one. But I am really interested to see what they do with Christian Watson, because the issue that he's had is just that he hasn't been on the field. He's had concussion issues. I think he had a hamstring injury earlier in the year as well. I think he was banged up over the summer as well. So he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. But the opportunity is very clearly there. So am I excited about him for today? No. But again, mentioned some players that to stash on the end of your bench. I think Christian Watson is a half decent option there. They took him at the the beginning of the second round. He's a big body wide receiver, has amazing field stretching ability. So I'm interested in him, but until I actually see something, I'm not going to be confident.
You do think though he will get more opportunity today, right? Like with the guys out, you do think he should see the field more. That's
yeah, he should do. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't taken a look and seen what his targets have been like, but I feel as though he hasn't seen more than 2 or 3 in a week.
He just hasn't really been on the field though. To your point, like last week he had I think 2 targets. I think it was 2 receptions, but he only played like 15 snaps.
Yeah. And they've been trying to do some kind of more creative things, getting him on jet sweeps and that kind of thing. And he's been all right in the as a blocker actually. But yeah, definitely one to watch for the second half of the season.
Yeah, you didn't mention that it was Leonard Fournette that threw the interception there, which now pisses me off because I have him in a number of places. Anyhow, let's go to IDP. Green Bay, Quay Walker. For me is the start there, linebacker, and even then, I may want to say overall, although Preston Smith is there, no Rashawn Gary. However, nobody on the opposite side of Preston Smith to help with the one-on-one matchups with him. Is he somebody that people should be thinking, well, he has the talent to kind of get to the quarterback, or is he kind of a product of, hey, Rashawn Gary was over there and taking attention away from me, Nate?
Oh, I mean, I think it's always the chicken or the egg conversation is when you have 2 defensive ends that both are above average, one of which is, borderline elite in Rashawn Gary. Do you take Rashawn Gary away? Does that just mean there's more opportunity for Preston Smith to get to the quarterback in terms of less people occupying the sacks, or is it just going to be double coverage? I don't know if he warrants double coverage. I don't know if they're going to need to even double cover, because I think that there's not going to be much, like we've talked about, in the way of Green Bay being ahead and forcing heavy pass volume. I will say, though, Quay Walker, man, without Devondre Campbell, I like Quay Walker in a assisted role a lot more. I mean, look at the weeks prior to the Devondre Campbell injury: 8 tackles, 6 tackles, 13 tackles, 2 hits, and a pass defense. And then without Devondre Campbell, it's been 4 solo, and the forced fumble. But I think he gets healthy this week. I think this is the turn it around. If we think that he can actually tackle Tony Pollard, that is.
Right. Flip side for Dallas, I mean, I'll start from the front and work my way back here. You have DeMarcus Lawrence. I almost said DeMarcus Ware. I did not. DeMarcus Lawrence. We have Micah Parsons. Is Van Der Esch somebody that could be a good LB3? No, not really.
No, okay. I don't know. I mean, I guess he could be. It wouldn't shock me if Van Der Esch had 8 tackles this game. I wouldn't say that I was blown away. If he has 4 tackles, now I know that didn't seem like a ton of difference, but when you look at Van Der Esch's like last couple weeks, it's been 8 tackles, 10 tackles, 7 tackles, and then prior to that it was 5, 3, 6. So I mean it's up and down. He just doesn't deliver much in the way of anything else. It's just straight tackles. Go back to safety though. Now we're talking.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So like Donovan Wilson, Jaron Curse, definitely. And even for a splash upside play this week, doesn't this feel like a good interception game for Trayvon Diggs, just given if there was going to be an opportunity for him to take advantage of an errant pass or a receiver not running the right route or something, I feel like this could be that game. Not somebody I'm hitching my wagon to. Obviously, the safeties, Donovan Wilson and Jaron Curse, are those 2 guys, but just something to keep in mind there.
Do you think that, and Jonathan, speak not, I don't want to speak ill of Green Bay, but I will. I know. I don't want to, though. It hurts my feel bad. But if you have a bum thumb, gripping the ball has to be a little bit of concern. Actually, I take that. I have no clue. It could be his left thumb for all I know that's hurt instead of his right.
I think it is his right.
Okay. I assume that most times.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, honestly, there have been a lot of calls given where the Packers are at the moment. They're 3-6. Next 3 games are Dallas today, Tennessee next week, and then the Eagles. they will quite probably be 3-9 at that point. And a lot of Green Bay fans are kind of saying, play Jordan Love. Just see what you've got in him, and so you can make a decision, because he's going in and he's got his 5th-year option. I think it's next year. And so you need to make a decision, because I don't think they're going to get a top 2 pick, which you would need to take one of the top 2 quarterbacks. So they are going to need to make a big decision. The cap situation is pretty hellish. And so you need to know what you have in Jordan Love, seeing him training is very different to seeing him in the actual game.
Yeah, they should have made that trade for Denver in hindsight now. Lil Wayne was right last week when he came out and said they should have got it. Well, maybe he was. We'll find out, actually. Let's go to the other 425 game. We got the Cardinals. We got the Rams. Looks like backup quarterbacks galore. So it really comes down to running back situation here. Keith, let's go to you for DFS for a second. Bargain play. And I'm talking like real bargain play. No running back for the Rams has really taken the ball and ran with it. That's great right there. Taking the ball and ran with it. Kyron Williams was activated off of IR. A lot of hype heading into the season. Yes? No? No? That's
the only guys that I really want in this game would be Rondell Moore and Tyler Higbee. Arizona is so bad against tight ends that I would be shocked if Higbee doesn't get 10 plus points at 3,600. I think the first time they played, he scored 10.1 the first time, had 4 receptions, 60 yards on 4 targets. And again, what do we normally see when you got quarterbacks in that don't have a lot of experience? They look for those, check down throws. And I just think that means Higbee even gets a higher volume already in a good matchup. So other than that, though, then give me the defenses. I don't care. Arizona's cheaper, so I'd probably take them more in DFS lineups at 2,700, but I don't see a ton of points. And ironically, these teams are mirror images of each other. Cardinals and the Rams, both not good against the run, but the other team can't run the ball. Both are really bad against the pass, and now they're going to be without their quarterback. So I actually think the offense that's going to have more success today is going to be the one that's, okay, we're going to throw. Even though we got a backup quarterback in, we're going to throw early, we're going to throw often. And because of that, that's the other reason I'd lead the Arizonans. I just think Kingsbury is terrible. What he is. Yeah, but he's going to throw, right? That's what he does. So I think even with Colt McCoy in, they're going to throw. But I would not be, other than Higbee and Moore, I would not be in the defenses. I would not be lining up any of those guys for DFS plays.
So let's talk about defense for a second here, Nate. I'm going to tell you 2 linebackers, Bobby Wagner and Isaiah Simmons. I feel like this is a model example of consistency. Wagner, upside, hoping for big upside play. Isaiah Simmons, but what are your thoughts here? Just can you start both? Can you rationalize starting both?
I can't believe you put Bobby Wagner and Isaiah Simmons in the same conversation when maybe Zaven Collins and Bobby Wagner should be the better. Okay. But I know what you're saying. You're talking about absolute boom or bust, right. And that's what so Isaiah Simmons has done one thing, that his usage has changed. I can do this. I can get through it. In that, instead of being just like your typical linebacker, where they assumed he would be, now we're starting to see that they've used him now from week 4 on, really in the slot primarily, and in turn he's delivered good performances. Let's go back to week 5 against Philly. Most usage in the slot of the entire season. What does he do? Gives you 13 tackles, targeted. He's bad in coverage. He's terrible. We know that. He's 31 targets on the season, 29 receptions, 303 yards, and a score. That's probably what, Cooper Kupp's going to get a go against him. And I don't think Isaiah Simmons is going to do much in terms of stopping Cooper Kupp, but I don't know if John Wolford's going to do much in the way of setting Cooper Kupp up for extreme success. It might be dump, dive, tackle, dodge, that old adage, as we know. Yeah. So Isaiah Simmons, blah. I think that we'll see 6 tackles, you might get. I want him to rush the passer more, which he's not. He has about the same. He gets about 6 pass rushes per game, and he turns it into usually like 1 pressure. He's had back-to-back sacks each week, which is the reason why his point totals have look inflated, because he's getting that sack. And I don't know if it's hard to say. I can't envision 3 weeks in a row for a sack for Isaiah Simmons. It's not good, analysis, but it's just take gut call.
Right. Let's go to the Sunday Night Football matchup. Chargers, San Francisco. Les, let me ask you, half PPR scoring. Who scores more tonight? Eckler, McCaffrey? If you had to guess.
I'm going to go McCaffrey. I think Keith mentioned the terrible run defense earlier. And I watched that game against the Falcons. They had Tyler Algier looking like, at least on that one play. Cordero scored as well. CMC.
Nice. Now, you also mentioned Josh Palmer over Brandon Ayuk here. You said Debo's back also, so obviously you're starting him. George Kittle on the flip side. Gerald Everett, I still think, is a decent tight end play this week here. We talked about Palmer, Eckler, Justin Herbert, obviously. On the flip side, on the defensive side of the ball here, Drew Tranquil has been playing lights out this season. We talked about it last week. We talked about it on Shoot the Gap. We've talked about it wherever we have had the opportunity to talk about a Chargers linebacker. We've been talking about Drew Tranquil playing really, really well. Obviously, Derwin James, most people's week in and week out, the DB1 in their rankings for a very good reason. He can rush the passer. He can play the run. He can play out in coverage. He can do everything you want him to do. On the flip side, we have, Fred Warner, and we have a returning Dre Greenlaw. I love Dre Greenlaw. I'm a huge fan of Dre Greenlaw. I don't see any downside in starting either, to be honest with you. Obviously, there is the concern for Greenlaw. Do they work him back in or not? I think they work him back in fully. And they're going to need these linebackers to get all over the field to help stop this running game. In the back end, we got Talanoa Hufanga, the strong safety for the 49ers. We got Nick Bosa up front. How did I forget about him? Am I forgetting anybody else, Nate, for IDP?
Not really. I mean, in all fairness, I think you pretty much nailed. Azeez Al-Shaair returns this week along with Dre Greenlaw, so there'll be a little rotation with those two potentially if they don't get all three on the field at the same time. But no, I mean, you touched on Nick Bosa in return. I think that's going to be the biggest key to this matchup as far as Justin Herbert staying upright, because our friend Trey Pipkins should get Nick Bosa, and it could be a long week in San Fran for the Chargers.
Let's go to the last matchup for the week. Thank you very much, folks, for everybody who's been tuning in. We're still here to answer your start and sit questions. Reports coming in: Tannehill active, Josh Allen active. That is officially confirmed. We got here Monday Night Football, 8:15, Washington, Philadelphia. Before we get into talking about it, let me ask you guys: Joe Buck, Troy Aikman calling the game now. We liking that, or are we still turning over to the other ESPN channel and watching the Manning brothers do their thing? Keith,
I'm honestly not crazy about either one of those duos. I lean more to the Mannings because at least it's interesting. I'm not crazy about Buck and I never have been, but I do want to real quickly say I love how the NFL goes to a place for the first time like Germany, and they're like, here's about the sloppiest, worst football you can ever see. They follow up with, just literally one of the worst decisions I've ever seen, throwing it from a wildcat there to 5,000-year-old Tom Brady, and then the Seahawks get all the way close to scoring on the other end, and Geno Smith has a horrible fumble to give him the ball right back. Germany fans are probably just like, what's the big deal with football? I don't get it.
Fair enough. What about you, Les? Are you a Joe Buck fan and Troy Aikman, or a Manning brothers fan?
I like Mannings. They're more entertaining, like he said. Yep.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's go here to this matchup, though. Man, I feel like this is a tough one, but here's what's not tough. Terry McLaurin can get open against anybody. I don't care which cornerback it is. He puts up good yardage numbers. He puts up good receptions. Always has a good receiving percentage versus anybody, and especially the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not concerned about him getting the yardage. I'm not concerned about him getting the receptions. I'm concerned about him getting into the end zone. So it's really going to depend on how much he's targeted in this game. You have Curtis Samuel there, who had that ridiculous touchdown when he was quadruple covered. That was a fluke play, but still, that was beautiful to see.
Ref did an amazing job there with the block.
Yeah. And then you have Jahan Dotson returning. No J.D. McKissick. As much as everybody wants Brian Robinson to succeed, we all do. Given what happened, it's been Antonio Gibson who's been rolling. This offense for Washington has to roll through Antonio Gibson in this running game. We saw how susceptible Philly was last week to Dameon Pierce. So one would hope that continues to be the trend for the Commanders. On the flip side, look, you have Jalen Hurts, you have A.J. Brown. I'm not as high on Dallas Goedert this week. I actually, if I had to pick between Dulcich for the Broncos or Goddard, I would go Dulcich, to be honest with you. Just has the better matchup here. Washington has allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to the tight end position on the season. I want to say the average is 5.3, so not really great there. Anybody else? Anybody else on the Miles Sanders train this week? Maybe Nate, are you feeling Miles Sanders this week against Washington?
I mean, you take out Cole Holcomb, and the best sure tackler that they have on the field's gone, and I think that probably doesn't hurt his floor or his upside. I just don't know how much I like this rotation. That is probably the best thing that Philly could do, is get everybody utilized and used in that backfield, keep everybody healthy, because they have to envision that they're going to be in for the long haul. I like Philly. You know that. I like Jalen Hurts. But someone was bringing it up, and it made sense. And they're like, is Philly really as good as we think? Because let's look at the games that they've won. They beat Detroit, which is fine. I get that. They beat Kirk Cousins in a Kirk Cousins primetime game. They went to Washington and won. They beat the Jags. They beat Arizona. They beat Dallas with Cooper Rush. They beat Pittsburgh, and they beat Houston. And I look at this, and it's like they get Washington again, then Indy, Green Bay, Tennessee, the Giants, Chicago. Then they finally week 16. Is week 16 against Dallas where they get their first loss, and they're kind of like, I don't want to say exposed.
Do they care, right? Because if the Cowboys lose a couple of games, they literally could have everything wrapped up and be like, we're not going to play for an undefeated season. We're just going to rest people.
Yeah. I don't know.
And with only one team getting the bye,
yeah.
I mean, it's
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just them. Yeah.
Hmm.
Again, I know that has nothing to do with this week, but
no, it's okay.
I like the Eagles.
Something to think about down there, especially for the fantasy playoff time.
Yeah.
So for defense, though, you mentioned, Cole Holcomb not being there. I think Jamin Davis has been playing pretty consistently, especially against the run.
Yep.
Has a 23% tackle rate against the run. His tackle rate for, overall, whether he's playing in coverage or not, is a little suspect. But against the run, he's playing really well. He had a great week against Philadelphia back when they played, back in week 2 or 3, whatever it was. And then, of course, we've got Cam Curl, strong safety for the Commanders. This line situation, in real football, I love Deron Payne. I love Allen. Even for fantasy, they have their matchups this week. Montez Sweat has had some matchups here and there. I'm just not liking it against the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line this week. For Philly, though, Philly is a conundrum for me in terms of knowing who to pick. Gardner Johnson had a big week last week. Kaiser White had, I forget off the top of my head, but for some reason his name is resonating right now. Anybody else here that we're feeling comfortable going against this Commander's porous offensive line?
Everybody on the defensive line. That's what I thought you were getting to, is saying you had a difficult time figuring out which player to start, because If it's Hassan Reddick, yes, why not? Javon Hargrave, yes, why not? Fletcher Cox, sure. Brandon Graham, yeah, absolutely. Because Washington has allowed like league high pressures to the teams that they've played over the last like 4 weeks. And we're not talking like just 13, 14 pressures for a team that doesn't get to the quarterback. We're talking 29, 26, 20. Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, who have had I would say a difficult time, might not be the best way to explain getting to the passer, had 28 pressures against the Washington Commanders. Afidi Odenigbo had 5 pressures. Yannick Ngakoue had 7. I mean, it's going to be bad. I think it's going to turn into pick your choice of which defensive lineman. I think it's going to be Josh Sweat that's going to sneakily get 2 sacks this game. But it could be anyone. But do this. Someone will have multiple sacks in this game from Philadelphia defensive line.
Fair enough. News just coming in that Mike McCarthy expects Ezekiel Elliott to sit this week. So, yay, Tony Pollard managers. And with that, that's going to wrap up all of our content here at Fantasy and Frames, getting you ready for Week 10 from our waiver wire on offense and IDP that comes out on Tuesdays, to our podcasts on Wednesdays and Thursdays, to our start and sits on offense and IDP on Thursdays, to our chasing upsides, both for offense and IDP, as well as our buy low, sell highs, as well as all the information we put on all our other channels. We have Beat the Waiver Wire. Our director of content here is Zach Berger, a.k.a. FF Chalupa Batman. Every week, every Saturday, he puts out these videos. They're about 5 minutes long on our YouTube channel, where he's basically telling you, hey, before we get to the next week's waiver wire, that's Sunday, before your 1 o'clock kickoffs, get these people ahead of time before people start talking about them heading into the following week. We get at least 400, 500 views each and every week for these videos alone. So definitely check those out on our YouTube page. Just great work from everybody here. And of course, we love hanging out with you all and answering all of your questions on the Fantasy and Frames pregame show. So for Les, great job this week with your buy low, sell high, always putting out quality content. Jonathan, Keith, your tight ends write-ups on chasing upside are fantastic. Keith, you work with Joe Matz on we gotta get Joe. I know he lives in Arizona. We gotta get Joe on the pregame show. Get him up early. Look, if David
he's probably drunk in Vegas right now. He went to Vegas for a boys trip Friday. Ooh. And he texted me last night because when we do a confidence pool together, 1 to 16 points, and 9 weeks in, I've already missed the 16-pointer like 4 times. And I was joking with him to bet on Ole Miss versus Alabama because I put 16 points on Alabama. And he texted me at 5:30 in the morning out there saying a 16 survives. So I was like, man, Joe is having a good time. So I'm glad he is. But I absolutely, we'll get him on here soon.
Nice. And of course, Nate, with all your IDP work and all your great job on Shoot the Gap. So check out all of our podcasts, check out all of our articles. We got about 15 minutes or so to finalize our rankings, and we'll tweet this out and put it on our Facebook page, the list to our rankings for both offense and IDP. So thank you, folks, for tuning in. Hollywood Titan, if you are still watching, this is for you. We will see you all next Sunday. 'Cause the players wanna play.